Welcome back to lesson number 5, Cuban motion, hip action, getting the body moving. So now we're moving up into the body. And so Cuban motion is the bending and straightening of our legs and knees to make our hips move. So let me show you what that looks like. So I am going to bend one knee and allow one to straighten, one at a time, just alternating to get my hips moving. All right, so ready to try that? So here's what we're going to start with, a drill to learn how to use that action with our hips and our knees and our legs. So the first thing that I would like you to do is to keep the feet flat on the floor for this practice exercise. So instead of lifting the heels up like I've talked about in some of the other lessons, for this drill to learn how to engage our hips, we are going to keep our feet flat on the floor. So just remember that, feet flat. I'm going to have you, again, just like looking in the mirror, I'm going to have you bend your right knee and keep the left one straight. So you're bending one and keeping the other one straight. So now I'd like you just to go ahead and switch. Just a reminder, keeping the feet flat on the floor. So bending, this time your left knee and the right one is straight. So one more time, bend one and the other one is straight, bend and the other one is straight. So the reason I'm having you keep your feet flat on the floor, because this allows you to get this action, which is, this is what's happening on that action. When you bend one knee, so go ahead and bend your right knee again. If you'll notice, if I put my hands on my hips here, that you see how this side went down lower. So one hip lowered down as the other one stayed the same, or potentially actually lifted slightly. So then when I switch, if you look at my hands as I switch from one knee bent to the other, you'll see that one is going down and then the other is going down. So let me have you follow along and do that with me. You can even kind of push down on that hip. So bending your right knee, you're going to bend the right knee and push down so that right hip is actually dropping down a bit. So go ahead and switch, bending your left, and that left hip is dropping down. So right now what we're getting is this action of our hips going up and down this way, right? So the bending and the straightening of the knees gets our hips moving in this direction, right? You can actually see my hips going from side to side. Now, as we do that, I'm going to add in a couple of things. So I'm going to add in the turnout we talked about back in the beginning with the footwork. So I'm going to turn my toes out, and I'll back up just a little bit, turn my toes out, and now what that's going to allow is this rotation of the hips going this way. So that's the next thing that we're going to add. So I had you keep your feet flat on the ground so that you didn't do this. Do you see how I'm lifting my heels up and my hips are actually not moving at all? So I wanted to make sure that your hips start dropping down. Now that I have my feet turned out, again, we are going to add this side to side rotation, so it gives us a whole nother dimension, up and down, side to side, like a washing machine. So the next thing that we are going to add is we are going to lift up the heel again. So we want to still make sure as we do that we still activate the hips moving up and down. So as I lift up my heel with my feet turned out, I'm going to drape, and we talked about this in the mini course, draping the knee across. So my knee, instead of going straight forward, and you can see that space between, I'm going to drape it in front of the other one. And now that adds in that rotation or twisting action. So let's drop that one down again and lifting the other one and then rotating it across. So by bringing the knee across, it starts to rotate the hips with the feet turned out. So I want to make sure with the feet turned out that I keep them turned out even when I drape the knee in, because it's easy to do this. And that doesn't, again, artistically give us as beautiful as a line as keeping the feet in that turned out position. So here we go. I'm going to have you go ahead and bend your right knee again. Bring it across. Make sure your feet are still turned out. And make sure that your hip on your right side is dropping down. So here's our hips going this way, and here's our hips rotating, right? So we do drop and rotate. And I am lifting my heel at this point. I'm going to drop that heel down, and now keeping the turn out, I'm going to lift the knee, drop the hip, and rotate my hip to the side. So let's go ahead and try that with the other foot. So I'm getting an up and down that we started with, and now I'm adding the rotation. So we have more dimension to it. So if I just did up and down this way, but if I add the rotation in, you see how it gives me a whole different look. Then the next thing I would like to add to that is even getting some more motion up into the rib cage. So this action is really from the hips, the legs, the knees, and the feet. So now we're going to talk about our rib cage. So the part, and I'm going to have you put your hands on your hips for me, and I want you to put them right next to the hip bone. So mine are right on the hip bone. This time I want you to take your left hand, and I want you to put it right at the bottom of your rib cage. So hand on hip, hand on rib cage. And notice that there's a space right there between the bone of your hip and the bone, the bottom bone of your rib cage. So that space I can separate, and I kind of squeeze that together, or I can expand it. So here's what happens when I add the rib cage action in. This is what it's going to look like, so you can see it first. I bend the knee, keeping the foot flat on the floor first, but now I'm going to release it and then pull it across so I have all this dimension. As the hip goes down, the rib actually lifts up. So there's hip going down, rib lifting up. So that gives me some action with the rib cage also. That adds more body action. All right, so I'm going to go through those steps one more time. So the first thing is that we just did our hips up and down this way. Then we rotated our toes open, turned out, and then we started bringing our hips across too. Then we really started focusing on that rib cage action. And this gives us sort of that figure eight look, right? So it's almost like we're doing like our figure eight weave that we do at the hoop with our own body. So the thing I want you to really know about this is that this is just a formula to give you some more body action. If you have a way that you like to do it that's different from this, that works out fine too. But the most important thing is that we keep the body moving and dancing too. If you want to add in this particular dance style to your hooping, if you're just doing your hoop, and the body is not really doing anything or standing in one spot most of the time, there's amazing things that you can do like that. Phew, all these tricks, it's amazing. But if you want the style of adding the dance part into it, then we need to keep really focusing on how to dance our body. So we started with our feet. how to take steps and move. Then we moved up into the body and the arms, and now we're talking about the hips and the rib cage and the knees, and so putting it all together. So the next thing that we're going to do in lesson number 6 is incorporate everything we've done in these 5 lessons with some basic hoop moves. When we get to lesson number 7, I'm going to encourage you to incorporate these things into your own favorite things that you're doing at this point. So if you're just a beginner and you haven't done very many moves yet, it's fine. You can actually incorporate these things into the most basic moves. In fact, in ballroom dancing, when we're working on our techniques, we try to do it in the most basic move there is for that dance. Learn it there first and then incorporate it into the more difficult things that we do. So you'll see me just using some more basic things to incorporate it together. But I'm encouraging you at whatever level you are at to add these in, incorporate some of these ideas into your own personal dancing and style of hooping.